Morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining our live webinar. Lastly, speaking from Budapest, Hungary. I will be your host today. And we have Michaela Musilova from the United States, from Hawaii with us. So good morning, good evening, Michaela. Thank you very much for accepting my invitation. And without further ado, I would like to say over to you, Michaela. The ball is yours.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming from all over the world. That makes me very happy to hear that. I hope that what I will share with you will be useful. As I think Laszlo mentioned, if you have questions, please use Slido. And if there will be many, he will have to kind of go through them, and so I might not be able to answer all of them. But feel free to contact me through my social media pages. I have an official Facebook page if you look for find it, and Instagram and Twitter. So if I don't answer everything today, feel free to ask me another time through the social media. And yeah, and otherwise, as also mentioned, if there are any other issues, please contact me. Both things through the chat. And I will get on with my presentation then. So thank you all again for tuning in. I'm going to share with you a bunch of advice from my personal experiences doing simulated missions to the Moon and Mars, which seem to have a lot of things in common with the situation.
I beg your pardon, Michaela. I beg your pardon. People are reporting that they are experiencing some technical difficulties. Your voice is fading. I'm not sure what the reason for that. So there are two different options. Either you come a little bit closer to the mic. I'm not sure whether you are using a headset.
I'm not. I'm just right by my computer. So.
Okay, can you say something just to be on the safe side? Thank you.
Okay, yeah. I'm
much better. Over to you. Much better. Back to you.
I'm going to sit right by my computer just in case. So yes, sorry if you didn't hear me properly. So the summary version is that what I will share is useful. It's based on my experiences from simulated missions to the Moon and Mars. Most of you have probably been in some kind of isolation for the last month or two, maybe. So maybe a lot of these things you have figured out yourself. But hopefully there'll be useful stuff in there. So first of all, I would like to introduce myself. As you've heard, I'm Michaela Musilova, or Michaela.
Sorry, I beg your pardon, it's Laszlo again. Would you be kind enough and switch off your cam just to save some bandwidth? So please switch off your cam. Thank you very much. Thank you. Somewhere in the middle at the bottom of your screen. Okay, excellent. Okay, excellent. Okay, we saved some bandwidth. Thank you. Over to you.
Okay, can you hear me better? Hopefully, yes.
Excellent.
Okay, and Laszlo just shared with me the poll. So I'm going to put this in the side. And I will get the result later. Yeah, so at the beginning of the presentation, I wanted to kind of see where everyone is from. And then I had some questions for you about what do you think the biggest difference between the isolation you're going through in your country, in your home, is compared to the missions. And I asked you this because I wonder if your point of view about this might change by the end of the presentation. So it's just out of interest for me, and maybe some food for thought for you, if you could fill in that role. And again, it's important, just out of interest. Okay, so back to the presentation. So, as I mentioned, my name is Michaela Musilova, or Michaela Musilova in Slovakian. I'm the director for the Hawaii Space Exploration Analog and Simulation, short name HISES. That's the white dome you can see on the picture in front of you. That station has been used for Mars missions. Now we use it for Moon missions as well. I will get to explaining to you what exactly we do there and how you can benefit from my experiences there. But first, I would like to explain a little bit how I got to this, what my experiences are. So I'm an astrobiologist. That means that I've studied geology, astrophysics, and biochemistry in order to understand how life came to be on this planet, how it evolved, and whether we can find alien life forms elsewhere in the universe. And this my studies have taken me to working for NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory during my time carrying the Curiosity rover.
Sorry, Michaela, I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. This is Lasse again. I apologize interrupting you. Some people are reporting that you are fading out. So before we continue, let me stop recording for a second. Sorry. Much better, much better. Back to you.
Well, this might take longer than anticipated, but I'll speed through this part. So it was just to say, started off focusing on astrobiology and looking for life in space. Part of my work was at NASA JPL, where at the time I started we're preparing the Mars Science Laboratory mission, so the Curiosity rover. And part of my research was focusing on planetary protection, so trying to minimize the potential contamination that we could bring from Earth to Mars. Because that would be the irony. As astrobiologists, we're looking for life on Mars, but we could accidentally bring it there from Earth, because we found that actually a lot of extreme microbes on Earth could potentially survive the journey all the way to Mars, the landing, and even the missions on the surface of Mars. And as a reward for my work there, I was able to put my signature into the Curiosity rover, which is currently on Mars. So it's a very nice memorabilia from that time. And after my time at JPL, I pursued a PhD at Bristol in the UK, where I continued.
Sorry, this is Lasse again. I beg your pardon. We are still having some difficulties with your microphone. So let me pause the recording for a second. Sorry for that, guys.
All right. Well, this is going to be interesting. I hope this helps. I mean, it's really, if it's the Wi-Fi at my home, there's very little I can do, and we are on an island in the middle of the Pacific, so let's hope this will continue working. All right, so let me breeze through this. All I was going to say at this point is that I continued focusing on life in extreme environments, and basically trying to understand if similar extreme life forms could exist somewhere else in the universe. And that's why I studied very cold environments, because we know of a lot of cold places in the solar system, like Europa, the picture in the middle, where the surface is covered in ice. There could be subsurface oceans, and so cold organisms that live on Earth, something similar could exist on these other planetary bodies. And this research is actually what helped me get on my first simulated mission to Mars, because I applied my research from studying these organisms in extreme conditions to a technology focused on fertilizing soil. So I found that these extremophiles, these extreme organisms, can produce a lot of organic matter despite the extreme conditions they live in, and so much organic matter that they could actually fertilize soils. So I mixed simulated Martian soil with these extremophiles, and you can see on the picture on the right, I was able to grow various plants and vegetables for members on my first simulated mission. And this mission was at the Mars Desert Research Station in Utah. You can see in the picture at the bottom. And this was kind of my step through the door into this sector, and that is these analog missions. So missions during which we test technologies, we perform research, but we also prepare humans to actually be able to go to Mars one day and back to the moon. And after the success of this mission and various different research projects that I performed during this mission, I was later asked to come back as commander of an international mission from around the world. You can see me doing research during this mission in the picture on the left, and doing research in the greenhouse we had station in the picture on the right. And that's kind of the track I continued research in. But in the meantime, in Slovakia, where I'm from, my colleagues there asked me to return to help move the space sector forward there. And so I decided to come back despite my research and work abroad. And during my time, I became the chair of the Slovak Organization for Space Activities, or what I call it a non-profit version of NASA. And we launched the first Slovakian satellite, SKQ. You can see in the pictures this very small nanosatellite. And we started teaching space engineering at universities and astrobiology, and now we're moving through the space sector, and hopefully Slovakia will soon become an associate member state of the European Space Agency, as we're still not currently a full member. But in the midst of all that, NASA was doing a selection for an 8-month mission to Mars, a simulated one in Hawaii. And so I applied and I was chosen. This is what the crew looked like. We were only 4 that were meant to be locked up in a station for 8 months. And this is a picture of us during our training in Hawaii. And this was our last selfie that we took just before the mission started. And you can see it was indeed at the high sea station where I'm currently the director of. And as the short version here is, it was meant to be an 8-month mission. Unfortunately, there was an accident very soon into the mission, and the mission had to be canceled. And that's a very long story for another time. But luckily, a colleague and I, we didn't give up. We wanted to take part in another mission, and we were recognized in our efforts, and I was actually offered the position of director. And so for the last 2 years, I've been running simulated missions here in Hawaii at the High Seas Station. So that's all to say how I got here and what I'm doing here now. So again, back to High Seas. So originally, High Seas was built for these long duration Mars missions, starting 4-month missions all the way to year-long mission. It was a collaboration with NASA and the University of Hawaii. Now we've opened it up also to doing moon missions, as NASA is planning on returning to the moon in the next 4 years, which will be a miraculous effort. You never know, it might work out, hopefully. And so to give you an idea of the kind of work that we do here, let me show you a quick video. I really hope this works. If it's going to crash technologically, but here's hoping.
This is the host Lasse speaking. So Michaela, some private messages are coming through the chat window. And there's a recommendation. I would like you to mute your loudspeaker on your notebook. It also means that you're not going to hear me, but you don't need to hear me. But please put on mute your loudspeaker so the mic is going to work. Some technical experts are suggesting that this is causing some latency problem. So let's try that. Please put on mute your loudspeaker.
Okay, but honestly,
Bottom right corner, you see the little loudspeaker icon. Just mute it, and the mic is going to work, but the loudspeaker is not going to work. So let's try that. Thank you.
You still hear me?
Yes, much better, much better.
You can hear me. Okay, yeah, yes. Okay, well, in which case I'll continue. So that video was just to show you that missions are and what we do in a nutshell, and I will talk about this a little bit now throughout my presentation. So first of all, I'll go straight to the point of the device. I'm sure most of you have found a way to have to live and work at home or wherever the different environments you have to work in these times of quarantine and shelter in place and all of this. One thing that was crucial during our missions, and I believe with you, is finding a good way to manage your time. So to give you an example, during our missions, our schedule filled sometimes into 5-minute intervals. That's how it is on the International Space Station. And part of the reason is that we simply have so much work to do, so much research, so many technological projects to do. and we need to use our time to the maximum. We have no time to spare. However, there's another reason why NASA, the European Space Agency, ESA, and other space agencies and organizations want to fill up astronauts' time to the maximum. That is to avoid boredom, which can lead to depression, the increase of arguments within the crew members. So to give you an example, our day was mostly revolved around the research and the work we had to do. However, so you can see colleagues in the picture on the bottom right in the science lab doing some geology research. However, we also had duties, so we had to do some cleaning, maintenance work. We were also asked to exercise at least 1 hour a day, every day. Astronauts in the International Space Station have to exercise actually up to 2 hours a day. And not to mention cooking and washing up and all those things. And so we were really left with only about 1 hour of free personal time in the evenings for ourselves. And of course, I'm not recommending that you have such a strict regime yourself to live in, but what I do recommend is that you really do give yourself a strict time schedule for working hours and a lot of people are struggling with the whole concept of working from home, and now that move the commuting time, perhaps the time you would do the gym or something, that basically the travel time, you're now adding all that extra time to your work. A lot of people are just working from morning to evening during the weekends because they're at home, they're in the same environment, so they feel like that's what they should be doing. Can't seem to detach themselves from that. So my advice is there, really try and be strict with yourself and give yourself a schedule of work, say 9 to 5, and only during the weekdays. Try to avoid it at the weekends, of course. It depends from every single person's situation. And to help you perhaps feel like you're at work and then you're not at work, maybe sit in a different place. If for example, for me, my workstation is actually the dining room table. I don't really have an office in my bedroom, so I work at the dining room table during the day, and then for the evening, for the fun activities or the weekend, I move to a different part of the house or the apartment. I go outside, but basically, not only do I separate my work time from my free time, but I actually even move to a different part of the apartment or the building if possible. That will really help you separate things. But so try and be strict with yourself. Really separate free time. Try and enjoy free times in the evening, just like you would during the time before the coronavirus. So spend time on hobbies, do exercise, and make sure at the weekend you do something very different to what you do during the weekdays. That way you have something to look forward to, and it's your motivation throughout the week. And ideally, I would recommend doing productive things in your free time, as that kind of gives us a sense of fulfillment, something useful, and if you feel happy with ourselves. So I'm sure people enjoy just binge watching Netflix or something. I mean, to each their own, but usually doing something useful actually gives people a bigger sense of fulfillment and enjoyment. Though, again, don't go to the other extreme of only working or only being productive. So need a downtime, so some time to just relax, chill, maybe go outside in fresh air. That's ideal. Separate yourself from constantly doing something. So that would be my main advice with regards to the time management. And I will come back to some of these points later. And just to give you an idea, this is some of the work we had to fit in amongst our inside the dome activities. We also had some work outside, testing technologies, little rovers you see here that are actually designed to be able to work in out of Earth environment. We have a drone here that, of course, is more adapted to terrestrial or Earth conditions. And then we did a lot of exploration with lava tubes or lava tunnels. So these underground caves produced by lava flows we have here, as this high sea station is located on the volcano Mauna Loa, 2,500 meters high up. And the lava tubes are interesting because on one hand, you can see in this picture that the humans are actually really small inside these caves, and on the moon, such caves, which do exist there, actually live inside these caves, build habitats in there, and protect ourselves from the dangerous conditions on the surface of the moon, such as high radiation and micrometeorite bombardment. But on Mars, we can actually find life forms, these extreme organisms that I study. We can potentially find them inside such lava tubes on Mars. And you can maybe even see in this picture, there's some different green and colorful colorings of the inside of the lava tube. Those are microbes that live there, and we go and study them and see if something similar could exist on Mars today.
Sorry, Michaela,
okay.
this is Laszlo again. Can you hear me?
Sorry, my slides seem to be a bit jumbled. There we go. So I will come back to some of these other things later, but so again, time management, it's really about separating time, but also separating space, working in different places, going to different places, and sorry, I keep on seeing some messages that are distracting me. And forcing yourself to not be working all the time. Find time for yourself, find time for family and friends. Everyone is going through a tough time these days, so spending time together is also a good thing, though I know maybe some of you are spending too much time with your loved ones or people that you might need some time alone, and that's also very important to add to your schedule. Okay, so my next point is empathy. That's actually maybe the most important point of this presentation. Is it's really important to realize that everyone is going through this situation, but everyone is dealing with the situation differently. So, some people stressed out by this, others might be feeling aggressive, and so on. So everyone, it's okay to feel bad or stressed out these days. And I'm sorry, I just keep on seeing these messages. I'm going to unlock this headset, see if that helps at all or not. Sorry. Try and do the presentation, manage these things at the same time. Connection. Are you guys moving something? So to give you an example from our missions, you can see the inside of the habitat in this picture. And while it may actually seem pretty big, the diameter of the habitat is only 12 meters in diameter. So actually the space is pretty small, and there's 6 people that live inside. So in the top right, you can see me inside my little bedroom, and you can see with all the stuff that I have in there, it's pretty cramped. And while it's okay to sleep there and maybe have some alone time in there, it actually can become very claustrophobic if you spend too much time there. So people generally actually tend to spend time in this main room. But you can see it's actually a multifunctional room. There's the desks on the right-hand side. So that's usually our workstations where we work all the time. But right behind the workstations, actually where people exercise, that kind of flat area with the carpet. And then right next door is already the dining room, and around the corner is the kitchen. And I'm saying this so you realize that sometimes someone may be working on some really important project, and there'll be someone doing jumping jacks, listening to music right behind them. It's super distracting. You can smell their sweat, and their music might be annoying, not to mention they're jumping around. And you just have to find a way of living in this space. And so that's really difficult, and it's definitely a test of patience. And so really the main way we get around to it, and the way we're trained to deal with this, is we're encouraged to be really honest with each other and to talk about everything openly. So even the smallest thing of someone is showering too much, and therefore they're using up our supply of water, or if someone keeps on burning the pots when they cook and things like that. It's little small things, but over a long period of time, that can accumulate and it can cause people to kind of explode. And that's what you don't want. So what we do during the missions is during every single meal we have together, so breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we all get together and we talk about the fun things during the day, our plans for what we need to do. But we also address any kind of problem that we may have. And we talk about it. It's really important to talk about everything, but be polite, be nice about it, be understanding, and realize again, everyone is dealing with the situation differently, and you criticizing them about something, might just provoke them too much. So try and do it in an understanding way. Say that you realize that, you also have your errors and faults, and let's just talk about this. And most importantly, let's not, kind of try and keep it inside and bottle it up, and it could explode. And so really we're encouraged to talk about everything and find compromises and solutions to every problem. And it works really well during the missions. We have the advantage, though, if we kind of prepare for this before even going into isolation. You all didn't have that advantage. And just like, for us, we know the ending of our mission. We know approximately, when the mission is due to end. With the current quarantine in many countries, we don't know when it's going to end. Actually, we recently found out that we have to stay in quarantine until the end of May here in Hawaii. So no one was very happy about that. But saying all that, so do talk about things, be honest, be open, but be understanding. Most importantly, have empathy. But if, it's getting too much that you have to keep on interacting with your family, your friends, or whoever you live with, it's important to find that time for yourself. And, we usually go to our bedrooms during the simulated missions, but some people go inside the lab or into the engineering bay or a greenhouse when a simulated space station has a greenhouse. And just find that time for yourself. Maybe listen to music or just do nothing. Some people like to sing and dance. It's their way of, getting emotions out of them. And generally, if you can, to have an hour a day for yourself, that would be ideal, though I know it's not possible for everybody. But it's important to regularly find that time just for you, away from everyone else, to get that peace of mind. And this, will help you with your work performance too, because you're not bottling emotions up. You can be more, and you will be able to react to situations better under stress, and so have a generally better performance. And I had already mentioned honesty before, and I'm just going to link it here for those of you that know the film and the book, The Martian. You might be aware that there was a situation in which, the main character was left on Mars, and people on Earth were deciding whether to tell the crew that had left him behind accidentally whether that this person is still alive or not. And and people on Earth were saying, well, no, we can't tell the crew that they accidentally left behind someone on Mars. That's going to drive them crazy and end the mission prematurely. But then others, were of the opinion that you shouldn't hide stuff from them and that they're likely to find out anyway. And that's essentially what ended up happening in the movie anyway. But in our missions, we are always told to be honest, and mission control can't hide things from us. So even, for example, if a family member of a crew member dies, they have to tell us, even though clearly the crew member is probably going to really struggle and they may want to leave the mission prematurely, but it's better for them to know than for it to be hidden from them, and then they find out after the mission and actually they feel even more helpless and desperate that they were not able to communicate with their families. So even in this day and age, that's why I'm bringing it up. Be honest with each other, have understanding, don't hide stuff because you think it's for the better good of the other person. Really think carefully what you say to others or not. But generally, from my experience, at least in the missions, honesty was always the best policy. And so these are just some examples of things we had to do to help actually build trust and encourage honesty in our crew. So this is during one mission, we had to wear these, you can see these colorful collars, we call them, or mood sweaters. And they would actually, they're meant to show what your emotions are. And they light a different color based on how you're feeling. And so you can see in the picture on the right, we actually had to do this exercise where we're all standing on this little towel and we had to turn it over while we're all standing on it. So it was a bit of acrobatics there. But you can see all our mood sweaters are colored blue because we're all very concentrated. Whereas on the picture on the top left, we're actually doing this speed dating session on the moon. So it wasn't actually about dating, but it was about getting to know each other. So again, to increase empathy. And you can see where all our colors are more kind of pink or purple because we're kind of showing our more sensitive side. And you can see whether some people are more agitated or some people are comfortable in this situation. And so we have to go for these kind of experiments and exercises to get to know each other better, but also to learn to be honest with each other. And therefore, again, to feel more like a family and be there, despite the problems we may have during the mission. And this then leads me to the next point about communication. During our missions, sometimes we can have a 20-minute time delay between when we send a message to Earth from, say, Mars. That can take 20 minutes. And then, the equivalent of NASA Houston, so the mission control, will prepare an answer for us, and it will take another 20 minutes for the response to come to us. So even in a very difficult situation, an emergency, it would still take at least 40 minutes to get help from Earth. So with Mars missions, we're essentially told to be completely autonomous, independent, and we have to solve all our problems ourselves. And that way we're very isolated from the world. And this also means we can't have live calls, go on social media, any of those things. We can only communicate by email with this 20-minute time delay. And this definitely puts a big pressure and strain on every single crew member. And so, of course, luckily, you're not going through such a situation. But one thing that we learned and that I want to recommend to you is for us, any kind of communication actually became vital for happiness and for the success of the mission. We used that 1 hour of free time we had per day to communicate with our loved ones back on Earth or colleagues or basically any kind of contact really, really helped. And that's something similar to what you're going through where you can't see a lot of your loved ones, your family, your friends, your colleagues in person because of the quarantine situation. So try to just really stay in regular contact with people, especially people that need it the most, the elderly, the sick people, anyone who's isolated. Because from personal experience, every single message that you send someone feels isolated, makes them feel so much better, makes them feel like they're not alone. That there's someone out there to hear them out. And again, it goes back to empathy. And related to that, though, I did want to say, be careful, those of you that do live alone, and you might be having too much alone time. And at that point, again, be careful not to isolate yourself and stop communication because that's just going to start a negative feedback loop for you to make you feel worse. So really keeping in regular contact with people is very important. And I'll mention this a little bit later, but if for example you used to meet your friends regularly at the pub or during a gym class or whatever, now you can't do it nowadays thanks to Zoom or now this WebEx where we're connected from all around the world. You can really stay in touch with people and play games and have calls and even do fitness classes online. So really try and keep that in mind. And even every day, I would recommend at least connecting with one person just to stay in touch with people and not to feel alone. And so just to show you, so we have a mission control center actually on the big island here where we have a team of engineers, a Capcom, so the main communicator between the analog astronauts and mission control, and usually a set of scientists. So on the picture on the bottom right, you can see a scientist from ESA, Bernard Foyng, who was our flight director during one of the missions. And so back to not isolating yourself. So you can see me on the bottom left having a Zoom chat with a good friend of mine in Ireland. Then I do online classes with my friends from the gym here in Hawaii, again, through the computer. We try and have the same kind of class like we would do in person, and we get to chat at the same time, have a good time, and on our missions, it was actually vital that we always scheduled time to do stuff together. So on the picture on the top right, you can see us all having a movie night. And that was some of our most favorite time to spend together, and we made sure to have at least one such evening per week. And then related to that, surround yourself with humor. And I made a spelling mistake there. In these times, it's easy to succumb to all the negative information that's being shared in the news. And I used to do this myself actually a month ago, where every day I would wake up and I would go on my phone and be like, oh no, how many deaths related to COVID-19 and what's happening in Slovakia and what's happening here and there. And then I realized it's very, very stressful and not good for you to do that. And so instead, I now allow myself only 10 minutes a day to read all these articles or main bits of information. And then the rest of the time, I try and surround myself with humor, like during our mission. So you can see, some funny moments from the mission where we even had an Iron Man, pun intended, on the mission, the picture on the right, where he was really good at ironing. And he actually happened to have an Iron Man t-shirt on the mission with him. Or this is one of my favorite pictures. You can see a tragedy on the moon where one crew member regularly would collapse during an EVA, so an expedition into the field in a spacesuit. Another one would then cry in agony, and yeah, this happened regularly and was a big source of humor. Of course, to each their own. Maybe all the memes that are going around the internet nowadays is what you need. However, it's just important to surround yourself with positive emotions and people that keep you in a positive mood as well. Another important thing, taking stock. I'm sure probably all of you have a lot of experience with this now, but from our missions, one of the first things we had to do was do an inventory. So we checked exactly how much food we have, how many materials and instruments we had for the duration of the mission, because in our case, if we use something up, it's done, it's over. We have no more resupply missions or nothing. We basically have to survive with what we get. This includes only a certain amount of water, which means we had a restricted shower time, and I will get to that in an instant. So just to the food, I always like to joke that you can see beef and chicken, or I think turkey, on the right-hand side, and the only difference between the two is really the color, unfortunately. Taste-wise, they don't taste very different. It's all dehydrated, freeze-dried food, and it either looks kind of like dog food you can see in the pictures on the bottom right, or as powder in the picture on the top. And when you mix it up, it many times just becomes this kind of brown mush you see in the picture in the middle. So not very exciting, but it can get even worse if you, for example, use up all your vegetables and fruits early on in the mission, and then by the end of the mission, you are only left with quinoa to eat, which is what happened during one of my missions, where the cooks were very eager at the beginning, were not taking stock properly, and then in the end, we were literally just eating quinoa every single day, including our last supper. So that was rather depressing. And just as a funny side point, and the reason I mentioned taking stock is, as probably most of you heard, there was this big trend around the world to hoard toilet paper, and it meant that a lot of people didn't have toilet paper and other important things. And actually now, after 2 months, or maybe even almost 3 months, for the first time, we have toilet paper in Hawaii. So I had to take that selfie when going shopping, because it was almost a miracle to see toilet paper available again after 3 months. Thank goodness I had some stock of my own. So all that to say, keep on track, keep on top of what you have. Please don't hoard things, because then people will be without, like we here in Hawaii without toilet paper. And really just buy what you need, but just keeping track of things is important, whether it's food or other things you have around the house. For us, water, as I mentioned, was also crucial. We had a limited amount of water available to us, so we were allowed only 8 minutes of shower time per week. Sometimes we were allowed less than that. We even had to write down how much water we were drinking. You can see some examples there, and that's why people would take bucket showers. So they would just pour water into the bucket and shower themselves with what was in the bucket, just to save as much water as possible. And we would even do things like use body hair as fertilizer. So you can see the liquid in my hand in this picture is made from human hair. So we could grow plants during our missions. Again, a way to be efficient and effective at doing research and not using too many materials during the missions. And then, of course, it's very important to spice things up. For many of you, you're probably really tired of where you live right now, of the conditions you're in. My big recommendation there is, try and spice things up for all of your senses. So for example, for your sight, maybe try and move furniture around, put different paintings on the walls, or make drawings. Like you can see us here on the picture on the bottom right. We're doing this creative activity that we had to as part of a research project. And then from that, we made paintings and we decorated the habitat with these paintings, and that added a bit of a visual stimulus for us. You can spice up smells by cooking different food or adding flowers, for example, to your house. Speaking of food, change things up for your senses, try different recipes, different kinds of meals. That will help you cheer you up a lot. Maybe listen to different music. And importantly, also in terms of touch, go outside, go into the fresh air, touch grass, trees, and you would be surprised how that little change in things will really make a difference for your senses and for you not to feel like you're stuck in a mundane, boring prison. And on that topic, you can see me looking at one of the 2 windows that we had in the habitat, and that's as close as I got to going outside, because when you go outside, you go in a spacesuit, and that's where you can only breathe your own air, which is usually sweaty, unpleasant, and you don't feel fresh air or wind in your face. And the most freshest thing you get is when someone actually grows some fresh plants during the mission. So you can see in the bottom left picture, there was one colleague that was actually using the lava soil to try and grow some plants for the crew so we could have some fresh vegetables. And for us, we even vary the research. We make sure that we're not just doing mundane, boring work every day. If there's a way you can spice up your work by changing projects or a different time of the day working on a different project, that can help give you that sense of variety as well. So again, you can see us researching some of the lava tubes, collecting samples there, doing work with big rovers, like the one developed by an organization here in Hawaii, Pisces. And on the topic I had mentioned spacesuits, I'm just going to mention this. Many of you have to wear face masks now as part of a prevention, not to spread the virus around too easily from person to person. And for many of you, might pose a difficulty in breathing. It might be difficult to breathe. You feel like you're restricted. It might be itchy. You want to touch your face all the time, even though touching your face is one of the things you really don't want to be doing, because that's a big way of spreading the virus. So my recommendation there is really try to treat your face mask like a spacesuit. When we're wearing our spacesuits or simulated spacesuits, we can't touch our face no matter what we do, simply because it's actually impossible. If we have something in our eye or there's sweat dripping down our face, something is tickling our nose, we can't do anything about it. We can't touch ourselves because the spacesuit stops us from doing that. And it takes really just a strong will of the mind to stop yourself from being irritated by this and just to move on and keep doing your work despite the annoyance. And so, maybe try and treat your face like that. Like you can't actually touch it. It's really bad for you to touch your face. You could increase the risk of getting the virus or transmitting it. So don't touch your face. And in terms of breathing, what really helps us when we feel like our breathing is restricted, and this happens a lot because of the design of the spacesuit, but also because the station is at a high altitude. Some people have difficulty breathing. So what we do is you almost go into a meditative state. You have to slow yourself down, breathe deeply, slowly, and that's when you will have a feeling of actually getting more air into your body. Trying to breathe deeply all the way to the stomach, and that way you're inhaling more air and you don't have this claustrophobic feeling of, oh no, you can't breathe, because once you start stressing out, you can hyperventilate and then you're getting even less air. So again, the key there is to just slow down, calm yourself down, realize you can breathe, you're not underwater, everything will be okay. Just try and limit touching your face. And finally, a couple of last little pointers. Keep your body and home in shape. So, as I mentioned, in our missions, we have to exercise at least an hour a day. You can see in the picture on the right, we actually even have to measure how our breathing is getting better or worse by doing various measurements into different types of plastic bags and things like that, and they check our heart rate and things like that. Of course, no need to go do that, but a regular bit of exercise, I would recommend 5 times a week if you can, even 20 minutes or half an hour at least, can not only help you, do something different, it's better for your body so you're not always in a sitting position, but also it, helps circulate blood around your body, will refresh you, give you more energy, not to mention endorphins. And the same with, your household. In these times, you don't want to find yourself with a leaking roof and non-functioning oven. So just keep track of all your important appliances, make sure nothing is breaking down. If there's an issue, address it as soon as possible. Like we do on missions, we cannot have anything malfunction. If something stops working, like our power source, or our spacesuits or source of air, then we're dead, just like we would be on a real mission to the moon and Mars. So we cannot neglect anything, and just advise you. Luckily, it's not as strict, but not as difficult. But just to keep on track, keep on top of these things. One thing that really helped us during the missions, and NASA highly recommends this, is to keep a journal. And it doesn't have to be a written journal. Here, I just put a picture when we were recording something during one of the missions. But nowadays you can just send video messages, or even just voice messages to friends, write people emails, or just write in a journal if you feel like. We had to do something like journaling every single day during the mission. And first of all, it's a good kind of stress relief. You get to write about some things that maybe annoyed you or stressing you out, so you get it off your chest. But actually, if you think about it, these are historic times. Let's hope this crisis won't last for much longer. And maybe one day you'll want to come back to these times and think about what it was like, and having some kind of photo or just text documentation might be something you want to come back to. And finally, and probably the most important thing, is to keep on reminding yourself of the purpose. Why are you doing this? On our missions, when things get really difficult, when arguments, people are tired of the horrible food and lack of communication, maybe they miss their loved ones. When the times get tough, we always remind ourselves of the purpose. We're doing this so that people will be able to go back to the moon and live there one day and finally get to Mars. We're doing this for humans, for the world, and essentially so are you. By having to be so restricted, by having to be in isolation and wearing the face masks and everything, you are saving people's lives. You're limiting the spread of this virus by taking that personal sacrifice. And that is the great purpose of what we're all doing these days. And just, if things get tough, remind yourself, you're not just doing this for yourself, you're actually saving people's lives. And I hope that will help you feel better about this whole situation. And I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'm sorry for all the technical difficulties. I'm not sure what exactly was the issue. I hope you were able to at least get the main points of my presentation for this, and I'm looking forward to seeing your questions. I might hand it over to Laszlo now.
So again, thank you very much, Michaela. Can you hear me, Michaela? Okay, excellent. So, and can you see me, please?
I can see you as well.
Please, can you please turn on your webcam now? Because I would like to open the Q&A. So first of all, ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the technical difficulties, but we managed to fix it. Thanks very much for your patience. And Michaela, well done, thank you. You did it, because I'm sitting 12,000 kilometers far away from you. So this is remote support, but we fixed it. So thank you. The other thing why I'm wearing a mask, because I just realized that if I would be an astronaut, I cannot touch my face, and I cannot scratch my, ears and eyes and all that stuff. But let me take it off, because it's not really a comfortable thingy. So, okay, sorry for that. There are a number of questions coming through the Slido. So I'm going to share my screen with all of you, and I'm going to do some checking here. So let me take back the control from Michaela. I will be the presenter now, and I try to share my screen. So ladies and gentlemen, again, I sent all of you the Slido information. So please go to the Slido and ask any questions you might have. So first of all, Michaela, can you see the Slido session now?
Yes, I can. Okay, excellent. Well, thank you very much. I'm glad you liked the presentation. Again, apologies for the technical issues. I'm not sure what it is, but honestly, sometimes it could just be the Wi-Fi here. We're an island. The network is not always great. But I think Laszlo will be sharing a presentation. I will give it to him afterwards once we finish here. What was the lowest and highest age when a person participated in such an experiment? Any experience with families? That would be the most similar to today's situation. So usually the age range tends to be like NASA selects between 25 and 50. Though honestly, it almost always tends to be late 20s, early 30s, as simply because of the physical requirements. As you might have seen in some of the pictures, you have to wear the spacesuit. You go for this really difficult and treacherous at times lava terrain. So we can only really have physically fit people. So we could have older people as long as they're super fit. And again, we don't want people who are too young because they're inexperienced, and it's actually the inexperienced people that tend to cause the biggest problems in missions. So we haven't tried families. There were experiments with married couples, though. That was, let's say, there more research needs to be done on that front. But definitely, children will probably not be included for a long time in this kind of research. Okay. Have you received an exact recommendation rules for the daily scheduling, or do you create the time yourself? We actually had to do everything that Mission Control asked us to. So they are the ones who scheduled the day, broke it down into those 5-minute intervals, and we many times are presented with this schedule online and this horrible red line that's following us the whole time. So the whole time you feel like you're running against time because this red line is following you. But of course, sometimes it's just impossible to do the tasks in time. Maybe sometimes there are problems. Maybe the weather won't allow us to go outside on an expedition in spacesuits. So we have to reschedule. So the schedule is somewhat flexible if you have good reasons to stray away from it. And as commander, I usually have the main call of whether we need to reschedule something or not. Okay, Laszlo, could you scroll down, please? Thank you. Any comments regarding isolation related to extroverts? Is there evidence that introverts handle these times any better or have specific issues? So, from my experience, we've actually had pretty mixed crews of extroverts and introverts. I myself am more of an introvert, but a so-called extroverted one, where I actually like to be alone and work alone, and that's why this kind of job works really well for me because I can be locked up there in the station for long periods of time. However, pure introverts are not good because you need to be able to communicate well with the rest of the crew and be empathetic, like I had mentioned in my presentation. So actually being able to be extroverted is very important, and same with the extroverts. They need to be able to live in these isolated, restricted conditions. So that's why we actually look for people that can do both. And so not really either end of the spectrum, but people who are able to be introverted when necessary, but also partially extroverted as well. Is there, oh, sorry, let's see. I think you might have skipped some questions above there.
I did it on purpose because the same questions came in, so this is the next one.
I'm leaving it in your hands. Are you better prepared for this than others because you've already experienced space isolation training? I probably am. Difficult to tell. I think because of all these experiences, for me, what's been happening these days luckily hasn't been so hard. I'm used to communicating with family, friends, and even colleagues by email via these kind of platforms where you just chat or maybe have a video call. I'm used to living with restricted amounts of food, and we had to survive 3 months without toilet paper. So on these space missions, you get used to thinking out of the box and finding another way around to dealing with situations. And so I would think yes, probably this prepared me a lot. And the only new thing was that my roommate, she had to live in isolation too. So now there's us here living in this one apartment. And, you know, for her, it was a new situation. And for me, it was a new situation to be with her 24/7. But, you know, we talked about things. We found compromises so that we don't bother each other too much. And that's probably what most of you have to deal with. You know, it's completely new, and you have to kind of find your way to navigate in the situation and find compromises so you don't make each other angry with people you live with. How am I experiencing the current situation in Hawaii? So luckily here, it's been pretty bearable, I would say. You know, I live on the Big Island of Hawaii, so there aren't that many people here, and everyone, for the most part, has been abiding by the rules. So our condition for the last, I would say, month and a half or almost 2 months has been that you can only really go from your home to the supermarket and back, or go from home to the doctor and back. And now we have to wear a face mask when we go to any public place. You know, we get the funny irony of going into a bank wearing a mask, you know, which no one could have foreseen probably. But because everyone is abiding by the rules, again, for the most part, we haven't had any major issues, no big outbreak. And we're hoping that, you know, the situation will come back to normal very soon because people are behaving well.
And let's look for the final question, Michaela, if you don't mind. So the final question with quite some votes. What does it mean that you are an analog astronaut?
So an analog astronaut is someone who is experiencing life and work as an astronaut, but we're not in space. So we go to these simulated stations like the one in Hawaii or the one in Utah, where the station is recreated to be similar to what it's going to be like on Mars or on the moon one day. And, you know, we have to live there like astronauts with limited supplies of food, water, materials. We have these communication delays when we communicate with Earth. We can only go outside wearing a spacesuit. And basically, we do as many things as possible, just like astronauts would on real missions, but we do it here on Earth. And that way, we're preparing people to actually be able to go to the moon and Mars one day.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Let's stop sharing because I would like to see you, and I hope everybody can see Michaela. So this is 3 minutes past the hour. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for all of you joining this live webinar from Hawaii with Dr. Michaela Musilova. So again, thank you very much. And as we promised you, we are going to share the presentation with you in PDF format. I'm going to reach out to all of you who attended this mission. And the most important for me, humor is part of the equation. So again, thank you very much. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Michaela. Bye-bye.
Yes. Last thing.
Yes.
Before you cut off, just as I mentioned at the beginning, but I'm not sure if people heard me, you know, if I wasn't able to answer all your questions, or if you missed information in the presentation, feel free to reach out to me through social media. If you look for my name, you'll find me on Facebook and Twitter, Instagram. So I'm happy to, you know, do a follow-up there if you, weren't able to get your answer just now. So thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Sorry for the technical issues.
No, we fixed it. And just a very personal comment, guys, and I wanted to share with all of you. Still, more than 200 people are online. How I got in touch with Michaela a little bit more than a month ago, or less than a month ago. So quite frankly, because I've been working from home for 6 weeks. I'm sitting in front of my computer. I was browsing the internet, and suddenly there was an article, and somebody's talking about Mars, Moon. I love NASA and I love all those things. And I started to read this presentation and the article. Then I got in touch with her saying, hey, I'm Laszlo, I'm from Budapest, Hungary. I would like to set up a webinar with you because many of my colleagues have been working from home. So would you be prepared? And she was very kind. And she says, hey, yes, why not? And finally, we pulled together this webinar. I hope this is the first, but not the last. And again, I just would like to say thank you very much. Internet and all these difficult times make miracles happen. So again, guys, thank you, Michaela. Thank you for all of you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Aloha.
Take care. Aloha.